Good evening, everyone. The July 14th, 2022 meeting of the Rent Control Board is called to order. Would the Secretary please take roll?
Yes, Commissioner Trosis.
Here.
Commissioner Sultan.
Here.
Vice Chair Foster.
Here.
Chair Duran.
Here. Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda tonight is the approval of the minutes for the meeting on June 9th, 2022. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, there's a first. Anyone second?
Second.
Okay, first and a second. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
Commissioner Trosis.
Here. Yes, sorry, my apologies.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 6, special agenda items. Are there any special agenda items, Ms. Conner?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. I have a couple of announcements tonight. First, I wanted to mention that all of the rent control registration fee bills have been mailed out to property owners. And so if an owner has not yet received their registration fee bill, they should contact our office and we will send a duplicate registration fee bill to them. They can contact us at 310-458-8751. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is, as we all know, the next general municipal election will be on Tuesday, November 8th. And there will be 3 rent control board seats to be filled in that election. The nomination period for people interested in running for any elected office in Santa Monica starts next Monday, July 18th, and runs through August 12th. A candidates workshop will be offered in person at City Hall this coming Monday morning, July 18th at 10 a.m. And candidates are encouraged to attend the workshop to learn about the process and to receive nomination papers. If there is anybody who's not able to attend the workshop, they can make an appointment with the city clerk's office to have the nomination papers issued to them in person. And to do that, they can contact the city clerk's office at 310-458-8211 or email them at clerk@santamonica.gov. And they will make an appointment for any interested people to come in and pick up their nomination papers. And that's all I have for announcements this evening.
Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding the announcements? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on then to item 6A, appointment of applicant for the unscheduled vacancy on the Santa Monica Rent Control Board. So let me see here. In terms of procedure, excuse me, this is the first time I've sat through this. Ms. Condon, what should we do? How should we proceed? What would be your recommendation?
Well, I would recommend, we've invited each of the candidates to make a 3-minute presentation. You've also received their applications. So I would maybe suggest that you just call them in alphabetical order. And they can speak for 3 minutes. And if you have any questions, you could follow up with questions. And then after you've heard from all of them, you would entertain nominations and then vote. And somebody will need to receive 3 votes in order to be appointed.
Okay. For the record, should there be any kind of reading or summary of staff report?
We don't really have a staff report. It was kind of what we've just said, that we have had 6 people submit their applications and express interest in the appointment. So I would just suggest that you invite each of them to make their presentation.
Okay, we will do that then. Thank you. I will go on the list in the order that I received them. Why don't we do this? Is there a time limit for how long they can address the board?
Minutes.
We made a decision.
3 minutes is what you had all suggested, 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, well then the first person I have on my list is Robert Cave. Mr. Ho, is Robert Cave present?
Yes. Mr.
Okay.
Cave, you've been unmuted. If you would like, please turn on your camera, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, my fellow Santa Monicans, my name is Rob Cave, and I'm a teacher, a rent control tenant, and a candidate for the vacancy on the Santa Monica Rent Control Board. When I first applied for this position, I did so out of a sense of civic duty. I was concerned that no one else would step up, so I put myself forward. I'm heartened to see that I was not the only one to do so. I've read my fellow applicants' documents with interest and was suitably impressed. Everyone brings something different to the table. For my own part, the main thing that I bring is a fresh perspective and my immigrant experience. I'm a relatively recent arrival to Santa Monica and to the US. I moved here in 2015 and became a citizen less than a year ago. I registered to vote as soon as I was eligible to do so, and now I'm seeking to play a more active role in the civic life of my community. I've lived in 2 rent-controlled apartments in the city and spent a year outside the umbrella of rent control in Northern California. I have first-hand lived experience of the extra pressures facing those moving around or into our city for the first time. As an article in the July 10th edition of the LA Times pointed out, the burden of higher rents affects newcomers to our city the most. But once in a rent-controlled apartment, they would also benefit the most from a proposed lowering of the 6% cap on general adjustment to controlled rents. Judging from the Santa Monica Rent Control Board's email inbox, it would seem many Santa Monicans agree. However, I also appreciate the needs of landlords. I've maintained good relations with my landlords in the city, past and present, and have assisted people seeking to purchase and rent property in the local area. I would consider it a privilege to serve on the Santa Monica Rent Control Board. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Cave. Are there any questions for Mr. Cave?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay. Vice Chair Foster, go ahead.
Mr. Cave, thank you for your application. I read it with great interest. It's so wonderful to have all these wonderfully interested and enthusiastic applications. Can you tell me again, so you've had 7 years in Santa Monica?
I've been in America for 7 years, 6 years in Santa Monica. I first moved to Santa Monica in 2015. I moved to Northern California. My wife got a job in Silicon Valley, and I lived outside of Santa Monica for 1 year in San Jose, and then I moved back.
And I just wondered if you have any experience working with tenants or landlords directly outside of your own tenancy yet, or have you volunteered or participated in any actions?
Not really, no. As I say, the biggest thing that I bring is a fresh perspective.
I appreciate that very much. I hope you
just I recall, I've helped friends and students with their tenancies and when they were looking to buy properties in the area. So nothing formalized, nothing formal.
That's okay. I was just curious. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any other commissioners?
No, just thank you, Mr. Cave, and really appreciate your desire to serve. I think that's really important, so thanks a lot.
And I would like to add thank you for your interest in providing a service to the city. We're certainly grateful for that. Seeing no other questions, I'll move on and we'll ask for the next speaker. Thank you, Mr. Cave, for your time. The next speaker I have on my list is Alex Elliott. Mr. Ho, if you could inform Mr. Elliott.
Yes, Mr. Elliott, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. If you've been unmuted, please go ahead.
Good evening, board. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Alex Elliott. I'm currently the chair of the Santa Monica Disabilities Commission. I'm a renter in Santa Monica. I've lived here for 7 years. By training, I'm a clinical social worker. I currently work as a psychiatric social worker for the LA County Department of Mental Health. As I also serve people with disabilities in a variety of areas. I've served as the chair of a stakeholder group serving deaf, hard of hearing, blind, physically disabled, and developmentally disabled folks throughout LA County. I also am really involved in closing the digital divide. I work on county task force around promoting the affordable connectivity benefit and just closing the digital divide that has really been exacerbated since COVID. And among other things, some of the things that I read the other candidates' applications, and we have a lot in common, but I think something that separates me is as the chair of the Disabilities Commission, something I commonly hear is as all the meetings, such as the Rent Control Board, City Council, my meetings went virtual, they're not able to fully participate like they would like to. And I'm very concerned about that, especially considering the 6% rent increase. I know that disproportionately affects folks with disabilities. That's what I've heard directly from the community. And we know the maximum SSI in California is $1,000, $1,040. So even $120 is critical. So I think about what we can do, and we can model some of the things that we've done as a Disabilities Commission. We pioneered the use of Microsoft Teams. We were the first board or commission to use that. We leveraged the accessibility features, carts, live transcriptions. And then there's also the digital literacy piece of just making all city staff and hopefully the board more aware of accessibility tools, the Microsoft Accessibility Checker. So when we're sharing information with the public, it's accessible. I realize this is a short term, it's 4 months, and I really want to be focused on things we can achieve within a short period of time. So for example, adding alt text to our social media posts and to our website, concrete things to move the needle forward so everyone can participate from November on. And that's my pitch. Thank you for the time, and I'd appreciate the opportunity, but even if I'm not able to serve and you choose one of the other great candidates, I just hope you can do whatever you can to protect the renters that are going to be really affected by this 6% increase. And one idea is just increasing awareness about the resources that are available: Medi-Cal, CalFresh, general relief benefits, affordable connectivity benefit, and subsidies for.
I'm sorry, Mr. Elliott, that's your time.
If you would like to finish your thought, Mr. Elliott, go ahead. You were cut off kind of mid-sentence, so you could finish your sentence. That would be great.
Oh, I just wanted to ensure that folks are aware of all the resources that are available, and I just list a number of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions for Mr. Elliott? Commissioner Crosis, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Elliott, if you were appointed to the rent board tonight, are you prepared to engage in a discussion around this capping of the 6% rent increase?
Yes.
Thank you so much for applying. Same thing I said previously. Just really appreciate it. Hope we can connect offline on all the fantastic work that you're doing, and very much agree on ensuring that we are more context sensitive and more friendly to the disabled community. I think we could definitely improve on that. So thanks for the suggestions as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I do have a question for you, Mr. Elliott. You might have said this, you may have said this and I might have missed it. How long have you been involved with the Santa Monica Disabilities Commission? How long have you been on that commission?
Over 3 years, and I've been the chair for over a year.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for your service. Appreciate that. I don't have any other questions at this time, but thank you for your interest in serving the city, serving our community, and if there's nothing else, then we'll move on to the next applicant. Thank you, Mr. Elliott. The next person I have on my list is Hannah Galloway. Mr. Ho, if you could prepare her.
Yes. Ms. Galloway, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Can everybody hear me okay? Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah, and I am Santa Monica resident since 2005, so that's getting close to 20 years now. I have lived in rent-controlled apartments for 15 of the 17 years that I've been here. My profession is as a technology design specialist, which I've been doing for about 20 years. And in those 20 years, I've also been the sole parent for 2 children. And there was no co-parent or child support involved, but rent-controlled enabled us to live here. And my kids attended the Santa Monica School District, and we benefited greatly, I think, from the framework that was put in place for folks like me to bring my kids to the community and take advantage of all the good things about living here. So, you know, my kids are grown up now. I'm still here and very committed to the community. I served on the Commission for the Status of Women in 2008 through 2011. And I just wanted to add to that I was also a landlord. Before we moved to Santa Monica, we lived in Western Canada, and we had property up there, you know, residential property. So I worked as a private landlord for a number of years. And I really do understand both sides of the equation. It's challenging to be a tenant, it's challenging to be a landlord, but I do have the perspective also of being a landlord and some of the benefits, I think, that come with that, which aren't often highlighted when you're what they refer to as a mom and pop landlord. So I'm bringing that to the table. Now, rent control has been in effect since 1979. There's been a couple of amendments to the charter, right, since it's been invoked in 1979. And I think that, you know, with the idea of rents being reset to market rates when people move out, and with the Ellis Act, I think that the original intent behind rent control has evolved. Now, with the rent control, you know, increase, the 6%, I think, which is fairly unprecedented, I think it's also a reflection of inflation, which this week was announced to be at 9.1%. I think in the face of these like really steep increases, there's a huge risk of undermining the stability that rent control has, you know, been invoked to create, and that concerns me a great deal. So,
I'm sorry, Ms. Galloway, that's your time.
Can we have her finish her thoughts?
Sure, yes. Go ahead, Ms. Galloway.
Ms. Galloway, you have been unmuted. Please continue.
Okay, I was just going to say I knew my time was up, and so I was going to stop there. But I wanted to just highlight those issues as things that really both concern me, but I feel like I also have opportunity to contribute, and that was where I was going to end my statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Here's. Okay, I do have a question. Ms. Galloway, again, forgive me, I'm moving a lot of papers around, so I may not have seen it. How long have you been living in the city of Santa Monica?
Coming up on 20 years. I moved here in 2005.
Okay. And you said you were a landlord in the past. That was in Northern California, correct?
That was in Canada.
Canada.
So, yeah, it was leading up to the time that we left in 2005, and then there was some overlap between when we were living down here, and when I say we, it was my children and I, and a house that we had left when we moved away from Canada. And so I had continued to be a landlord for a period of time.
Okay. And then you said you were on the commission on the status of women in
Mhm.
Santa Monica. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And when did you serve on that commission?
2008, 2011.
And after 2011, were there any other things that you, community work that you did, organizational work, anything in the city or for the
I was
institute?
I was super involved with the school district. So I served on task forces that had to do relating to kids in the community. It was also because I was a single parent, I had 2 children in the schools, so I was really involved at that level as sort of leading within the areas that were afforded to me as a parent that was involved with the schools. But the task force in particular was kind of an outreach of the Commission on the Status of Women, and I continued to do that for a number of years, actually.
Yeah, thank you so much for your interest in the board. All right, we will be talking soon. So thank you again, Ms. Galloway. I will then move on unless there's no other questions. Seeing none, I'll move on to the next person I have on my list, which is Timothy Harder.
Yes, Mr. Harder, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Good evening, board. Can you hear me? Awesome. It's good to see some familiar faces and really exciting to see so many applicants apply for this position and hear about all the people that are interested in civic engagement, which is great to see. My name is Tim Harder. I've lived in Santa Monica for 12 years in rent control apartments. As you can see, my dark bedroom behind me with a laundry on the bed. My husband and I share 1 bedroom in the Wilmot neighborhood. I'm quite passionate about housing. I hope everyone had a chance to read my application, but I worked for Assemblymember Richard Bloom for about 5 years on working on housing policy and transportation issues and homelessness in Santa Monica and the greater LA region, including, Ellis Act and ADU, Casa-Hawkins. So quite informed on housing policy and talking to landlords and developers and tenants and constituents that are having issues about getting by day to day or making their monthly payments. I sort of get really passionate a lot about that because some people don't know to contact some members or contact their elected officials and ask for help. I think some of I've been in the background sort of helping out the community a lot for the past decade, but I've never really put my hat forward because I was nervous that no one was going to, sort of stand up. And so I'm really happy to see more people involved and looking to help out because this is a really difficult time right now. Thank you to the board for the past 2 years of what you've been through and helping all our residents. It's just, it's been a very difficult time for the past couple of years. And then with a Tuesday night's council session, didn't get any easier. Or with the election last year. But I just wanted to say, I'm here to bring people to the table, all stakeholders across the board. I listen, I've been trying to connect with Denny and Michael as well at SMER. I think we need to all put our heads together and really educate council members on what the issues are and what's happening and how serious this is and why this is not front page of the paper every morning. It's really mind-boggling to me. I know that constituents, I've met multiple families in Santa Monica that, need these services and literally get by $50 a month. So this is really scary for, those people. There's all of my, qualifications, everything's in my application, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be respectful of your time. And again, thank you for your service and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harder. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Tim, and Mr. Harder. Really appreciate your thoughtful application. If you were to be appointed tonight, would you be prepared to have a fruitful discussion on potentially urging council to put a cap on the current 6% rent increase?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
No other questions? Okay. I do have one. If you could remind me, Mr. Harder, did you do any involvement or have you done any community work in Santa Monica?
Just sort of in the background with community groups and helping with chamber events or Santa Monica PAL, the police activities lead, helping with pointing people in the right direction to council offices or help or interconnecting them with city officials, city staff, but haven't been appointed to anything at the city. Just sort of more civic engagement groups in the city of Santa Monica.
Okay. Thank you so much for your interest and your time. I don't see any other hands up, so we'll move on to the next person on my list, which is William, excuse me if I mispronounce this, Kerala?
Yes, that's correct.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Crowley, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, you have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Some of you already know about me. The reason I've been a lone resident of Santa Monica for more than 25 years. I live in this unit for 25 years, and I believe I can contribute and help the poor with their work. Santa Monica is a city that I much care about. In the past, I worked as a volunteer for different city commissions, for the Clean Water and Beaches Commission. Unfortunately, I had an accident, a head concussion, ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks, so I stopped coming to the commission. I told them, listen, there is nothing, I cannot be part of the meetings anymore. I need to recover. Anyway, my qualifications. Why do I want to be part of the board? I believe one of my strengths is that I'm a quick study, and I'm willing to put the time and effort to learn fast and help the issues the board continually faces. I already work with some of the people on the board, with Mrs. Tracy Doubts, I think is her name, in the improving the rent decrease petition, because it's a long process that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, resources from the board, that we can use that money more efficiently. Having used in the past as a tenant the tools that the city offers to us, the tenants, I think I can contribute to mitigate the misunderstanding that sometimes surge between the parties involved. I'm prepared to fruitfully participate in possible solutions. I will help both parties. First suggestion, the goal is to build a bridge with long-term solution between the two parties. How do I plan to do that? What do I have to put on the table? Well, I have an MBA, and at the end of the MBA, I took a 6-month course on strategic planification. What it does, and the key element in all that tool, is that the reality is dynamic, it changes constantly. So the plan cannot be static.
I'm sorry, Mr. Carolla, that's your time.
Okay, Mr. Carella, if you'd like to finish your thought.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the end of the thought. Yeah.
Go right
Mr.
ahead.
Mr. Carolla, you've been unmuted. Please continue.
Okay, so like I was saying, in planification, in strategic planification, you have to combine all the resources, time, money, and efforts, in order to achieve your goals in a more efficient way. I already proposed, I think I sent Mrs. Torres' an email about how can we improve the rent decrease petition. But everything has to do within the framework of the law. What can be done is not what I wish to be done. And how can we put together all the resources to, like I said, build a bridge for both parties in long-term proposition, one by one, but with the solutions that we can use time and time again for the same problem between tenants and management companies, because there are few bad apples.
Thank you,
Mostly
Mr.
of
Carolla. Thank you so much for, we can't be unfair in our allocation of time, but that was a
I
fantastic,
understand.
and we have, several of us have met you in the past, and thank you so much for your application.
I understand. Thank you for the opportunity. You have a good evening and take care.
Thank you. I do want to thank you also, Mr. Carolla, for your service to the city. When I saw your application for the Clean Beaches and Ocean Parcel Tax Citizens Oversight Committee, that warmed me up, because that was where I got, I guess you could say, my start in the city. That was my first commission way back when, probably before there were computers, but it was a while back. But in any event, I remember that commission fondly and all the people working there. Thank you for your service on that board and for your interest in joining this board as well. Any other questions?
No,
Nope.
thank you, Mr. Carolla. It's great. And I really appreciate that you've been so proactive at coming up with good solutions and problem-solving mechanisms for us. So thanks for applying. Really appreciate it. And Steve, I learned something new about you. Chair Duran.
This is
There
my
you go.
city.
Thank you so much, Mr. Crowley.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. The next person I have also is the last person on the list for applicants, and that is Erica Leslie. Mr. Ho, if you could prepare Ms. Leslie.
Yes. Ms. Leslie, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. If you would like to turn your camera on, please do so. Please go ahead.
Good evening, board members. My name is Erica Leslie. I am.
Hang on one second, Ms. Leslie. I could barely hear you. I don't know if it's just me or if it's everybody else. Can you put your volume up, perhaps, or speak closer to the mic?
Yeah, I still can't hear you, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me.
That's a little better.
Is that better?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, now that's
Okay.
better. Thank you.
Sometimes it's technology, I tell you. As I was stating, my name is Erica Leslie. The reason why I'm applying for rent board is because there's no other time where rent control is most important than now. I've been keeping abreast since the pandemic and even before of measures in rent control, how to reach out to people and help them, because I've been obsessed with how to help my neighbors and our community. I've been down to City Hall just the other night, also down helping people apply for the COVID-19, protection money. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. My apologies.
It's okay.
I've also been out just trying to provide food for our neighbors that have been overburdened with rent, unable to receive their unemployment, and trying to help them navigate their way through trying to avoid eviction from even though we have eviction protections that have been provided to everyone in the city, they still had to learn how to navigate their way to prevent eviction, even though those protections were in place. Some were just not abiding by the law. Even as I was at City Council on Tuesday night to advocate for our communities, for our economically disadvantaged neighbors, and for our handicapped neighbors and our neighbors that are undocumented, and seeing that even our council was not aware of Section 1805 in Chapter 4, so that people can adjust their rents accordingly if they felt that they were overburdened with the high inflation that's taking place right now. I'm come to help our community and add some diversity to the board, and I hope you accept my application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leslie. Commissioner Trosis, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ms. Leslie. Really appreciate all the work that you've done throughout the pandemic, and thanks for applying. Any reflection on the discussion on Tuesday night, and would you be prepared to have a discussion tonight on any sort of recommendation to council on a rent cap?
My comments for the council for Tuesday is that some of our council members need to go back and read the charter for rent control so they can become more aware of what they're able to do and what they're unable to do. We need more emergency powers here on this rent control board so that we can help the people before there will be more homeless on our streets. We have many of our neighbors out going to food banks because they can't afford to buy food.
Right. Thank you. Really appreciate your insight.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Ms. Leslie, can you hear me?
Yes.
So it sounds to me like you have some specific experience with our rent charter. I just heard you quote chapter and verse of our charter code. Would you say that you have some experience specifically with our staff and assisting neighbors and tenants, sort of like one of the other applicants was mentioning, but can you elaborate on that experience a little bit more of helping tenants and learning the law?
Well, I've been reading the charter due to the fact that, just like I said, some of our elderly tenants here, neighbors, have been slapped with eviction notices, increases in rent illegally even before the 6% increase. Our elderly are on fixed income, and so I had to read up about what could be done during the pandemic and what could not be done so that I could help them and even call and reach in to staff for them what resources were available for them.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Leslie, thank you very much for your interest in serving our community and also your application for this board. There are no more applicants on the list. However, there are a couple of people who wish to speak on this subject. I am reminded to send a note out to anyone who may wish to speak on tonight's agenda to contact the board secretary, and I'm going to give you our number, which is 408-740-7256. The meeting ID number is 826-260-621, and the passcode is 4872. We do have, before we go to discussion, we do have two requests to speak. The first person on my list is Elizabeth Lear. Excuse me if I mispronounced that. She's requested 2 minutes. Mr. Ho, can you assist with that?
Yes. Ms. Lear, you will have 2 minutes to address the board. If you would like to turn your video camera on, please do so now. You have 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, hi. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm going to ask that you don't appoint tonight, that you wait. I mean, Commissioner Phyllis had made that request, and the public has not had a chance to review the applicants and to comment. For instance, I could not see the applications until I called to ask how to get them, and then it was emailed to me. So I don't think this is fair. People, even you guys that have experience, have been unable to contemplate the possibilities of certain situations. We need to be very careful moving forward now. And so I'm going to ask, and you're probably going to say it's in the charter, you can't do it. Well, commissioners should have known that before that was requested. So I'm going to ask that you not appoint tonight. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lear. I have another request to speak from Sonia Sultan, and she's requested 3 minutes. Mr. Ho, if you can assist Ms. Sultan.
Yes, I believe telephone number ending 2191 is Ms. Sultan, and this is the item that she wishes to speak on. Telephone number ending 2191, you have been unmuted. If this is the item you wish to speak on, please state so, and please go ahead. Hello, telephone number ending 2191. If this is the item you wish to speak on, please go ahead.
Ms. Sultan, are you there?
That's the wrong telephone number. It's the other one that ends in 7899.
My apologies. Ms. Sultan, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Rent Control Board. Yes, I am calling I think we have some really good candidates tonight. I was really interested in hearing what everybody had to say, and I agree it's wonderful that we have this outpouring of interest, because this is such an important board to our city and to our, certainly to our renters and our landlords. I am calling in support of appointment tonight of Ms. Erica Leslie. I have gotten to know her over the last couple of years, mainly because she is such a hard worker. And when an opportunity to volunteer to actually help people in real time comes up, she's the first one who puts her hand up. Even in the early part of the pandemic, when most of us were afraid to go out of the house, she donned her mask and took her hand sanitizer and went down to City Hall to help renters who were really hit with the financial hardships during the pandemic, fill out applications online for state assistance. And that's just one example of all the things she's done. I know she's the chair, I believe, of the Black Agenda, which is a really important group in our community. And she does just a lot of volunteer work and on so many levels, particularly to help those who are hardest hit by, first we have the pandemic and we have this hyperinflation that's just made things so difficult for people who are low income and even moderate income people. So I think she would just be an excellent addition to our board. And besides all of her obvious personal qualifications and experience, I think it's really would be such a positive development to have a person of color on our rent board, but that's just an added benefit from Ms. Leslie, because we definitely need a diverse board, and every elected board in the city should be to reflect the diversity of our wonderful diverse city. So I know that we have an election coming up, but I think we have an opportunity to we just really can't deal with having vacancies at such an important time in what's going on in the community, and I think it's really important to make the appointment tonight. So I really do urge you to support the appointment of Ms. Erica Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sultan. Appreciate your comments. I don't have anyone else on my list to speak. Mr. Ho, has anybody called in since we started this discussion to talk on this item?
Yes, we do have a caller with telephone number ending 7097. Caller, you have been unmuted and will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Kennedy, and I'm calling on behalf of Santa Monicans for Renters' Rights to express the unanimous support of the SMER Steering Committee for the appointment of Erica Leslie to the Rent Control Board. Erica has lived experience as a renter and already has demonstrated her concern for other Santa Monica renters through her service on the SMER Steering Committee and as a volunteer to assist Santa Monica renters with applications for state rental assistance during the pandemic. We know Erica as a tireless community leader through her service as head of the Black Agenda, as a member of the Downtown Santa Monica Inc. Board, and as a member of the Interfaith Council. Erica is a person of deep integrity with a commitment to fair treatment for all and is a fearless voice for many in our community who have no voice. Please add Erica to the Rent Control Board so she can continue her service to the Santa Monica community. And I would just like to say briefly and personally, excuse me, I know Erica personally, and I know that she has a deep interest in this role. She dedicates herself to the issues, she's a positive person, and she enjoys working with and within the community and has demonstrated this. Please vote to appoint Erica to the Rent Control Board tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Ho, is there any other speakers who wish to speak on this item?
No, we have no further callers.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I'll open this up for discussion, is what I would normally say. However, I think what I'll do this time is, well, unless there's something that anybody wants to discuss, otherwise what I was going to say is that I would open up to hear nominations, and we'll just go down the list, and you can give me the list of nominations and we'll vote on them as we go. Ms. Condon, can you give me a little assistance on the way that maybe this should proceed?
Well, hold on. The rest of us, I think we should all agree on that first. Can we comment on your proposal just now?
Well, exactly right. This is uncharted water for me, so that's why I was going to ask Ms. Condon, and of course we can certainly discuss if that's what the board wants to do. But just to set a parameter, Ms. Condon, what would you think the procedure should be?
Well, that is up to the board, but it's similar to what you've done when you nominate the chair and the vice chair. Somebody can make a nomination, and then others can also make nominations. Then you could go around and each vote for the candidate that you would like to appoint to the board. So you can just, if somebody has a nomination to make, they can make that nomination and just ask if there are other nominations as well. And then you can have Mr. Ho call each of you to see who you vote for. And as I mentioned earlier, a candidate will need 3 votes to be appointed.
Okay. So then let me ask, does that work with my fellow commissioners as a procedure we should follow, or is there something else you'd like to say? Vice Chair Foster, go ahead.
That works for me when we get to that part. I just feel like the applications were so robust and there were so many, I just feel like it bears a little bit of discussion first before we just launch, because one of us might be able to persuade another person before we start voting, for instance. So it just seems to me like we should have some discussion before we start making nominations.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Trosas, your hand is up.
Yeah, I second that, and I think we should potentially go around and each give our impressions, and then after we've done that, we can make a motion to go down if there's someone we want to support and see if they have enough votes.
Okay, both of those work just great with me as well. So why don't we just then open up discussion on all of them, and anybody who wants to say something about one or several can do so, and I'll just go around the horn and then we'll see where we are on the other side. So who would like to start with any kind of discussion? Go ahead, Commissioner Sultan.
Yeah, I would just like to make a general sort of comment that it's just incredibly heartening to see the interest we have in the rent board. I think sometimes we feel kind of like siloed here, even though it's like a big part of our life, but it's we don't always know that there are others in the community, who are as enthusiastic about rent control as we are, and it's just so great to see all these folks stepping up saying, "I'm going to be on the rent board." It just makes me feel really, it's been a really challenging time. I mean, the pandemic, and now we're facing this, potential 6% increase in rents that is obviously going to be, if it goes through, going to have a hugely negative impact, particularly on folks with fixed incomes, seniors, and folks with disabilities. But it is, it gives me hope to see that so many folks are energized around this issue and wanting to participate and make change. So I just feel like we have a lot of really good choices, which wasn't something I was necessarily.
The last part cut out.
Oh, no, I just think we have a lot of great choices. I think it would kind of be hard for us to go wrong here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Trosis, I see your hand.
Yeah, I would just say that to echo Commissioner Sultan's comments, we are doing this work 24/7, 365, and we are so passionate about it. And to see other folks stepping up to understand that this is an issue in our community is incredible. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I would also just say that we have an election coming up in November, as Executive Director Condon mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. So regardless of the outcome tonight, I encourage all of you to look into that. I think on a personal note, this has been the absolute pleasure and joy of my life to be on the Rent Control Board. It is amazing to get to work with the most qualified staff. I think anywhere in the state or country. I just have to give them a shout out. They're the ones who are doing the real work, the hard work behind the scenes every day, and really looking at what makes sense for our community. How do we protect the integrity and the diversity and the fabric of our community, and how do we make sure that we're affording a fair return on landlords' investments, while at the same time really making sure our renters are protected. So thank you. It really means a lot that all of you stepped up. And I just have to say, on a personal note, Ms. Leslie has been a tireless advocate that I've seen in the community for quite some time, making sure that our folks are able to access rent relief, we're able to draw down federal and state resources, we're able to educate the community about their rights and responsibilities, and I think that that makes a difference in my book. So I appreciate each of you, but I think I'm leaning towards a nomination when we're ready.
Okay. Vice Chair Foster?
Sure, I'll chime in. I kept checking with staff, how many applications do we have, who has applied, can I see the applications? And I think, and we'll have this discussion offline as well for more detail, but I think, I wish the applications had been like up on our website, kind of like other boards and commissions applications have been. Members of the public were able to access them only after like we provided them, or they were in the packet, or staff had to provide them. So I wonder if we can tune up the transparency of the applications, maybe for the future. I am thrilled at the wealth of applicants because we've got at least one open seat coming up. If Commissioner Chirosis, when Commissioner Chirosis moves on from us, we will have more. And so it's really wonderful to see people getting involved in the rent board. Too often, we don't hear from folks until it's turning green and falling off. And we really want people to avail themselves of the wonderful services of this board and the staff and community organizations like some of the ones we've heard from tonight, who help tenants and communicate between landlords and tenants. So I just feel really lucky that we have people who are getting qualified. I think there are some things people could do who wish to serve on this board that could even better qualify them for service. And I hope they keep contacting us. I hope that applicants know they can reach out to us for phone calls or, quasi interviews or advice before this night comes every time that this happens, and that they would avail themselves of that more often. I received multiple communications from the community about one applicant. It doesn't mean that the others aren't qualified or enthusiastic, but I have to go with someone I think has specific experience with our charter in particular. And like for me, that's probably one of the major qualifiers that would lift somebody perhaps over other applicants, because it's really hard to make this determination. But Miss Leslie had multiple emails sent to me singing her praises, even more so than she was willing to do for herself tonight, which tells me she's a selfless person. So I'm thrilled at all the applications and glad to see them all, but I'm also prepared to make some nominations. Love to hear what Commissioner Duran thinks, or Chair Duran thinks.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, we have one vacancy which we are required to fill, and I am pleased also that so many people have come out and shown interest. So, and also, which means we can only choose one person. There are many qualified candidates, I feel, of the pool of applicants that we saw this evening. I will say, for those of you, whoever you are, who aren't selected tonight, please stay engaged. Please continue to serve your community, and if you haven't, jump in. We can all use the help. And I say that because at the end of this year, I will term out, and there will be a one vacancy in this November election for my seat, having been reelected 3.5 years ago. So I will be out. So if you're not selected tonight, don't be too discouraged. I hope that you stay engaged, and keep in mind that November is just a few months away, and you'll get another shot at it. So thank you for your interest and your time, and I hope to continue seeing you as we move forward and into the new year. So having said that, I'll entertain motions for, I guess, nominees. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but if anybody would like to make a nominee, go ahead. I see Vice Chair Foster.
I would like to nominate Erica Leslie, with my sincere thanks to everyone who applied. And yes, we have other openings. Please stay interested. Please stay in contact with us. I nominate Eric Leslie.
Okay. Any other nominations, commissioners? Seeing none, we will vote on Commissioner Leslie. Ben, if I could have a roll call vote.
Yes, Commissioner Terosis.
Yes.
Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you all for participating, and as I mentioned, please don't be discouraged. Stay engaged, stay involved, because there will be one more vacancy come November, which will be my spot, as I mentioned. So yeah, please stay engaged. And Ms. Leslie, welcome to the team. Is she present?
Yes. Ms. Leslie, you have been unmuted. If you would like to turn your camera on, please do so.
There we go. I was told to turn it sideways, and maybe that would help. Is that better?
Nope, now you're sideways.
Thank you. Thank you. It is my privilege to serve our community. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. So now Mr. Ho will swear in Ms. Leslie, and she will join us for the remainder of the meeting.
Ms. Leslie, please raise your right hand. Do you, Erica Leslie, solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of a Rent Control Board Commissioner according to the best of your ability?
Will.
I believe I heard I will. So
I heard
that's
it.
great.
I do. I will.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. Leslie. Commissioner Leslie.
Thank you.
I will say it is tough to hear you, so as we proceed, we'll see what we can do about getting that fixed for next time, but try and, I guess, speak closely to your mic so that we can hear you.
I think I'm going to switch over because I didn't think I was going to be at home during the meeting. So I think I'm going to switch over to my laptop and see if that doesn't help.
Okay.
Maybe leave your phone line on while you switch over so we don't lose you completely.
I'm going to leave that on. I'm just going to turn the video off.
Very good.
Very good. Okay, then we will move on to item number 7, public comment. And as a reminder to the public, this is a time when you can speak with us about issues you may have that's relevant to our jurisdiction. Because it's not been agendized, we cannot discuss it or anything like that, but we will take your comments. So, Mr. Ho, I have 2 people who wish to speak on this item. The first I have is Phyllis Dudick, and she's requested 2 minutes.
Yes, Ms. Dudick, you will have 2 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I want to thank you for the commitment you've made to renters and for your tireless efforts working on the emergency in which we find ourselves in this moment due to the 6% increase tied to the 8% inflation. I'm concerned that an element in the board's amendment presented to the City Council may not be receiving the attention it deserves. I'm speaking of your power to authorize a rent freeze in a declared federal, state, county, or city emergency as deemed appropriate and necessary. Neighboring jurisdictions do have the power by ordinance and ability to act in real time. We do not have this ability due to our charter status. So it is urgent that we anticipate and prepare for the unknown and the unforeseen as best we can to avoid life-changing consequences for renters. We have the opportunity now to stock the toolbox through the Rent Control Board amendment for the November ballot, and it is important that this crucial element be included and advocated for strongly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dudick. Secretary Ho, I have on the list next Elizabeth Lear. She requests 3 minutes to speak. Did she want to speak on this item too? Do you know?
Yes. Ms. Lear, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. If you would like to turn your camera on, please do so now. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hello again. Okay. So I want to know if anybody's reached out to the new city attorney's office, the new city attorney and the city attorney office to find out if the city council has powers to act before September's 6% rent increase goes into effect. SMER, that would be Santa Monica Renters' Rights, who's de facto tenant advocate, is leading people to believe that there was a possibility, or that there is a possibility, that City Council can act, and either act before September or act before November. We still don't know that if that's true. I have reached out to the City Attorney's Office to ask, no response. And let me remind you, there are probably many people who still do not know they're going to be facing a 6% rent increase and going to be shocked when they get this in the mail. Okay, so I want to know what happened at the July 12th City Council meeting, what they're bringing back on July 26th. There was something about a rollback. What does that mean? Come September, should rent control renters expect to pay 6% or $140 plus the registration fees and the taxes and bonds that get passed through to tenants? Should we be prepared to pay for that in September? And then let's see. And then at some point, if there is a 3% increase limit, will that be for all rent control tenants or only for low income? And will you have to apply for that and prove that you're low income? And then I want people to know that landlords have received state rental relief funds on their for their, if tenants couldn't pay. Don't feel sorry for the landlords. They're in Santa Monica, the value of their property goes up. In fact, if they evict somebody or somebody dies or somebody moves out, they're harassed out, the value goes up even more, right? Because they get to raise the rent to market rate. I'd like somebody to define mom and pop and what percentage of our landlords are considered mom and pop. And then finally, I want to say that people, please be careful what you vote for on the ballot. Be wary of tax transfers. Be very wary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lear. Appreciate your comments. I do not have anyone else on my list. Secretary Ho, are there anyone else who requests to speak in item 7?
No, that was the final request for public comment.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Then we will move on to item number 12, administrative items. We have Brian Augusta, the Rent Control Board's advocate and representative in Sacramento, who will present a report on the 2021-22 regular session of the California Legislature. Hello, Mr. Augusta, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Pleasure to be here tonight with you all. Tough decision y'all had to make a few minutes ago. Impressive list of candidates, and sincere congratulations to Commissioner Leslie on her appointment. Look forward to working with you. I am, as Chairman said, the board's lobbyist in Sacramento, and I'm here tonight to provide a little bit of update about what is happening in Sacramento and a preview of the last 6 weeks of the legislative session, answer any questions you may have. So we're at the midpoint, well, beyond the midpoint. We're in the home stretch of the legislative session, the 2-year session. Just before the July 4th holiday, the legislature and the governor passed and signed the budget and then began their 1-month summer recess. And when they return in August, at the very beginning of August, there'll be just a little bit of work left to do. There will be probably some follow-up budget work, but primarily the focus will be on bills that have any state costs, which are going to be going to the Appropriations Committee in either the Assembly or the Senate. After about 2 weeks, we're going to take up that suspense file for those bills that have significant costs and go to the suspense file. And that's sort of the last really big hurdle for a number of bills. And then it's the floor. And we will, for 2 weeks, the legislature will work to clear all bills off the floor and send them to the governor. Any that don't pass off the floor are, of course, or don't pass out of the Appropriations Committee are dead for this session. They'll need to be reintroduced next year in the new legislative session. And then the governor from there has about a month to sign or veto any legislation that makes it to his desk. So just prior to the recess, I would say the big news coming out of Sacramento was the state budget. There are a few items of interest to the board. I would say with respect to housing and homelessness funding, despite a record surplus in this year's budget, we did not see the same level of investment in housing that we have seen in the last several years. I think there were some other priorities that the governor and legislature had, but that's comparing it to investments in recent years. And for many years, when I've come before the board prior to the budget situation that we've had recently, where we've had a significant surplus and the opportunity to actually do some general fund spending on housing, we often would see very little in the budget on housing. So, I suppose it depends on what you're comparing it. But for this year, much less than what we've seen in years prior, but some significant investments nonetheless. Expanding the state low-income housing tax credit by $500 million, or continuing to do so. Putting $250 million into projects that already have some level of affordable housing funding and are considering applying for tax credits. We're going to put some money instead into those projects and move those forward. We did $1.75 billion into that fund last year. This year we're doing $250 million. There are some other amounts listed in your report that the board has before it, but $425 million for the infill infrastructure grant program, $350 million for the Cal Home program, $150 million for preservation. These are significant amounts that will help advance those. One of the new things coming out of that budget is a new program, $500 million for the California Dream for All Home Ownership program. Somewhat untested idea that the state would be essentially a partner, an investor, providing equity to new homeowners who are trying to enter the homeownership, to achieve homeownership for the first time. There's a chief priority of Senate leadership, and it's going to be a multi-year program to roll that out. There was also $30 million in funding for essentially local legal aid programs, provide additional resources for eviction defense. One thing that was not in the budget, which we expected, no surprises here, but we knew this was coming, but there was no additional money for COVID relief, COVID eviction relief or rental debt relief. And it also marked the official end of the state eviction protections. Now, there are local protections both in the city and as a result of the county's actions to enact eviction protections, but the state eviction protections have ended, and the program that was erected to provide rental assistance to those who couldn't meet the rent during the COVID pandemic, that program is winding down. Applications closed some time ago, and the program is coming to an end. So that's one thing that unfortunately was not in the budget. I do want to mention one other item for the budget that's not actually discussed in our written report, other than a reference a little bit further down in our list of bills, which is some investment in seismic retrofits. This board has, for a long time, supported and urged the state to invest in seismic retrofits, particularly for soft story buildings that pose a very significant risk of collapse during an earthquake. There have been several bills over the past few years to create a funding program to do that. The most recent one, AB 1721 by Assemblymember Rodriguez, that program, that bill has not moved forward in the second house in the Senate, but the provisions of it are in a budget trailer bill that were enacted. And in this budget, the legislature has committed $250 million to that program. Some of the details are to be worked out sort of at the administrative level through regulations or guidelines, but the main thrust of it is to provide some financing to retrofit those buildings, putting some priorities towards areas with higher risk of earthquake collapse, of course, but also targeting lower income communities and more vulnerable communities. So that's encouraging to see some investment there and hopefully the beginning of additional investment. So that's the budget. And as I mentioned at the outset, we are sort of heading towards the end of the legislative session. As is always the case, start the year with hundreds of bills of potentially of interest to the board. And that list narrows as the session moves on and bills are amended, are killed in committee, or the members decide not to move forward. And so I'm going to just touch on a few that we've been following for the board and that you all have asked previously about, some of which are still moving, some of which were held earlier on and are not moving this year. One of them is SB 1133 by Senator Archuleta. During the pandemic, there's been a lot of discussion about price gouging, also as a result of wildfires, both of which have impacted this region. And the state has protections in the penal code against price gouging on a variety of things, including housing and the price and the cost of rent during a state of emergency. And that has provided some limits on rent gouging during the pandemic. This bill, which started out much worse, would erect some new limits on how those price gouging provisions apply during emergency. And we'll say that tenant advocates have been successful in narrowing the bill, but in its current form, all of the provisions of the penal code, which would otherwise automatically go into effect, will only go into effect during a declared emergency once the declaration of emergency is posted on the state's Office of Emergency Services website. But it also eliminates the word housing in a portion of the bill. It maintains the protections for rental housing, but removes a more general protection for housing. And for that reason, many tenant groups remain opposed to the bill because of the ambiguity that deletion would create about ongoing protections. That bill is in the Assembly Appropriations Committee, will likely go to the suspense file, and we'll know in a couple of weeks if it will continue to move. There were a handful of other bills I just want to mention quickly. The tenant, as you all know, a number of years ago, AB 1482, the Tenant Protection Act, was enacted that provides both good cause protections and a rent cap on certain units, mostly new, older multifamily, so has a new construction exemption, and in some limited instances, single family that are not covered by a local rent control ordinance. And that bill has a number of exceptions, which include to its good cause requirements, which include owner move-in, removal from the rental market, substantial rehab. And those exceptions have proven to be a bit of a loophole. Assemblymember Wicks had a bill sponsored by a number of tenant and housing groups to close some of those loopholes. That bill stalled early on. We expect to see Ms. Wicks or another author bring that back next year. Wicks also had a bill that would have created an opening for an alternative to security deposits, which can provide a barrier to households in initially moving into a unit, but it was essentially authorized what amounts to an insurance product. LeaseLock is one company that markets this product, and there are a lot of concerns about about the product and whether it really provides a good alternative to the current security deposit rubric. That bill was opposed by a number of groups, and the author hit pause, so that's not moving forward. Same is true with this bill that we've all been watching for a number of years to create a rental registry, a state rental registry. Even after the bill was limited to just, as defined in the bill, corporate-owned properties, that bill too did not move forward. Just mentioned two other ones that are continuing to move that go to sort of the issue of eligibility. One of the barriers to housing for many tenants is the ability to overcome certain screening and requirements, and those include tenant screening for criminal history. AB 2383 by Assemblymember Joan Sawyer, one of several bills that's sort of looking at this issue of how do we provide a fair process for those who either have a criminal history or the landlord believes they have a criminal history that precludes them from renting. So 2383 is one such bill that's moving to limit what information must be disclosed and at what stage it must be disclosed, and to provide an alternative way for the tenant a process for the tenant to explain any information in their history that may preclude them. I also want to mention, in that similar vein, AB 2559 by Assemblymember Ward, slightly different issue, but tenant screening reports, the cost of those reports is also often a barrier for many tenants. This bill would create a reusable tenant screening report, or sort of for the first time define what that might be, which would allow the tenant to provide a fee to a third party, and then the landlord pulls that report each time, rather than the tenant paying a fee at each property that they go to, whether or not they ultimately are selected. So providing a little bit of additional flexibility. It doesn't mandate that those reports be used, but it is attempting to create that. And then finally, I just want to mention another bill that I know a lot of folks have been watching over several years is, and Senator Allen, Santa Monica's representative in the Senate, the joint author of the bill, SCA 2, which would repeal Article 34. There's a provision in our state constitution that requires a local vote to approve affordable housing development in certain instances. And it's been both a practical barrier, but is also historically a provision of the Constitution was born out of what many believe to be sort of a racist campaign to exclude low-income housing from certain neighborhoods in California, and it's in our Constitution, and many would like to see it repealed. There have been efforts in the past, and this is the second such constitutional amendment to be introduced in the last couple of years. It's not moving forward this year. If it did, it would be on this upcoming ballot, and that deadline has passed. So our understanding is it has, although it's still technically possible for it to make the ballot, that's not seemingly the goal. But advocates expect to, once again, next year, take another look at the issue and with the intent of bringing it to the ballot in 2 years from now. So I know we've already had a long hearing. I'll stop there and see if there are any questions or comments, anything I didn't cover that you'd all like to talk about.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gusta. I see Commissioner Terosas. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That was very comprehensive. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all your work on our behalf in Sacramento. I think, an issue that I'm very concerned about, that I've been historically concerned about, is the soft-story seismic retrofitting and the fact that we are still not, meeting our mandate with respect to the program the city put into effect. My understanding is that there's $250 million in one-time general fund money for a 2023-24 multifamily seismic retrofitting grant matching grant program. I would just ask that on behalf of the board that we are very active in any sort of discussions around how this is crafted in terms of the actual implementation. My understanding is that there might be prioritization to jurisdictions that already have some sort of ordinance in effect related to mandatory retrofitting pertaining to like earthquake susceptibility. And our jurisdiction is one of the jurisdictions that has an ordinance in effect already. So I just want to make sure that we're putting up money and that we're also getting we're drawing down the matching dollars, because I know that this is something we've heard extensively, and $250 million, quite frankly, isn't that much. Just want to make sure that we're really proactive on that, and that would be my direction. Other than that, I always think that all of the surplus money should go towards housing, affordable housing, preservation of existing housing. Of course, all of our budget surplus this year was kind of chopped up in a lot of different areas, but really appreciate all of your work. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for the comment on that. I'll work with your staff to make sure we monitor that.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other commissioners? Any questions for Mr. Augusta? Any comments? Commissioner Leslie, go right ahead.
How's my audio?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. So I just had a quick question. Has there been previous legislation in regards to rental checks, credit checks prior to this?
Yeah. There have been a number of bills. There have been some additional bills, which I didn't go over in this presentation, that deal with some various aspects of tenant screening and the barriers that presents for low-income tenants in particular. There are a number of bills. They're listed in that in the staff report that we provided that have now died. But this is of increasing interest, I would say, in the legislature, given the number of bills that we saw this year.
So is it okay if I ask another question? So
yes,
as far as for HUD and Section 8 housing, this has come up repeatedly as far as having credit checks also preventing people from obtaining housing, because they're already going to be subsidized for their rent, that it should be prevented from them running a credit check on those low-income applicants.
Yes. Yeah. So there were two bills that, or I should say three, that provided some limits on that this year. One was 2203 by Assemblymember Luis Rivas, that, as you're describing, provides limits on those who have assistance, like a voucher, as you're describing. Quirksville had a bill with similar limits. The one that moved the furthest this year was the Senate bill by Ms. Eggman, who, like the other two, provided limits on the use of consumer credit reports for those who have a government subsidy, like a housing choice voucher. It was probably the most moderate of those, because it also required some other evidence to be shown by the tenant. I think it's somewhat telling of the politics on this issue that all three of those are no longer moving. But given that we had three, arguably four bills on the subject this year, I suspect we're going to see more again next year. And that issue is going to continue, I think, to be a priority, not only for advocates, but for members of the legislature.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leslie.
I just wanted to say thanks to Brian for coming and for all this advocacy. A lot of it goes on, when he's up in Sacramento and doing his thing and consulting with staff. It's not always just these little brief, all too brief meetings we get with Brian, but thank you so much for all of that. I could talk about all of these bills all night long, but that's not what we're here to do. We're here to thank you for your continued advocacy and service on behalf of the Santa Monica Rent Control Charter.
I agree.
Thank
100%. Seeing no other questions, Thank you very much for meeting with us, Mr. Gusto. Really appreciate all your work that you do for the board.
Thank you. Thank you all. And Commissioner Leslie, I think I may have missed my opportunity earlier to say congratulations to you. So welcome and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I did hear you. You couldn't see me.
Okay.
My camera distracted.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then to item number 14, board discussion items. Letter A, request of Commissioners Torosis and Foster to discuss proposal for a charter amendment to lower the current 6% cap on the annual adjustment. Vice Chair Foster, Commissioner Torosis, you have the floor. Anybody want to speak? Go right ahead.
I think we have some public comments on this item, right?
Yes, but you go ahead and make your comments first, unless you'd like to hear the public comments first.
I wouldn't mind hearing the public comments first.
Can I just say we put this item on the agenda in anticipation that City Council would take action. We did not see that action on Tuesday. However, we still would like to urge them to place immediately a ballot initiative on the ballot for a charter amendment to cap rent increases up to 3% dependent upon CPI. And so that's what the discussion will be. Right now we're sitting at 6%. And looking forward to hearing the public comment and then giving our kind of feedback and hopefully moving something forward to City Council.
Okay, very good. Then I have 3 people on the list. The first I have is Jay Johnson, and he's requested 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, Mr. Johnson, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This is Jay Johnson calling. I'm with Progressive Landlords of Santa Monica and watched with great interest Tuesday night when we were at, some of you as well as myself were at the City Council meeting. Yesterday, we spent 2 hours meeting with Bill Davis, who's another person I think you're familiar with and a tenant in the city. And virtually the first thing that we wholeheartedly agreed with him on was the pod program. And we're strongly encouraging that the rent board really work hard on building the safety net for low-income residents by increasing the funding and the reform for the Preserve Our Diversity Rent Subsidy Program, which could be done with a change to the city budget. Doesn't need to be on the ballot. No ballot measure is needed. There's, without getting into the weeds on it, and Bill Davis and the rest of us spoke clearly on why we need to really rebuild that, and it will not happen without the rent board really pushing on that one. Secondly, was the issue on how important it is for tenants to file for fee waivers of the rent control registration fee. Only 184 units approximately have low-income fee waivers out of 27,000 units in the city. And with all the testimony we heard Tuesday night and that you're constantly getting all the emails on, we're quite surprised that more tenants who claim that they're low income have not filed for reg fee waivers. So I think it's a matter of communication and low awareness. I think it needs to be clearly spelled out, much stronger stated in not only the newsletter, but in any other methods. Fundamentally, there's one thing that came out Tuesday night and I thought was very interesting, and that's apparently a big lie that's going on, and that's this idea that and claim that there's 7,000 rent-burdened tenants in the city. Now, the Andy Agel from the development staff explained that number is coming from the census reports. The census reports, as I'm sure we're all aware, is very vague as to any kind of vetting that goes on with it or double checking. In particular, 1,500 people on Section 8 vouchers in particular would be counted as part of the 7,000. We're down to 5,500 from that point. There's 27,000 units in this city, arguably 35,000 tenants, and the question of rent burdening is something we just don't run into that much. Obviously, if tenants have issues, they call us and we work with them. In this particular case, we've given a 3% increase in September, first another 3% in March. So in effect, splitting the increase with some people who have issues or that we deal with. And
I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, that's your time.
Mr. Johnson, if you'd like to finish your thought, go right ahead.
Mr. Johnson, you've been unmuted. Please continue.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We're saying do not place the rent freeze item on the ballot. Bad for tenants because 80% of the buildings were built before 1979 are deteriorating, and more limiting on rental income combined with unlimited rising expenses of the earthquake retrofit in the balcony are wind up in unsafe buildings. I'll stop there and thank everyone for their attention. And hello, Bill Davis. Greetings. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate your comments. The next person I have on the list is Phyllis Dudick, and she requested 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, Ms. Dudick, you have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I would just like to comment that briefly that regarding the POD program, yes, there's kind of a lack of communication, may not be reaching the right people, but also the requirements are so very stringent that many people who are in need are turned away. So there's a lot to look at there for the future to expand and liberalize. I was at the meeting, part of the meeting. I didn't sit through the whole meeting on Tuesday night, and I'm hoping, I know some things were voted on with regard to the amendment, but I'm hoping that representatives of the Rent Control Board will be on hand on July 26th to present and discuss any aspects that weren't voted on in the amendment so far, so that there's a thorough clarification for the council and others. And also, of course, I do want to address that power to freeze rents. It just seemed to get put to the side. I didn't hear too much on the discussion there. And I'm glad, I think it's important that we all know that the landlords did really not suffer during the pandemic, and that Santa Monica did receive over $36 million in funds from the emergency funds from the federal government that were paid to exclusively to landlords, so that people over 2,000 residents could live in could pay their rent, and it was paid to the landlord. So, there's this misconception that I'm hearing from many people, especially from homeowners, that the landlords suffered during the thing. They're just not aware that they were helped. They were helped also, and I think it's important that this be brought out for the public knowledge. And I'm sure the council knows, but they could also be reminded. Wouldn't hurt. And also, we talk a lot about the low income, and the low income needs help. But there are people who are not exactly low income, maybe, but they're still, they need help too. So what you're doing is very, very important, and we hope that I know that we're all hoping that there is a way with our charter that City Council will be able to find that power to act. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Dudick, that's your time.
Thank you, Ms. Dudick, for your comments. Really appreciate it. I believe we also have Bill Davids on the list to speak. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And after Mr. Davids, are there any other requests to speak?
Yes, it looks like we have 2 more requests to speak. It appears that Sonia Sultan has rejoined. Ms. Sultan, if you would like to speak on this, please stay
Oh,
on
wait,
mute.
I'm sorry. No, hang on a sec. Let's do Mr. Davids first, since he was on my list, and then afterwards we'll do whoever has called in. That's okay.
Yes, Mr. Davids, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. In preparation for this, I did indeed meet with a small number of property owners, and I am aware of their concerns, and there are two distinct things that I want to say. Number one, for the property owners who talked with me the other day, I realized that there should be areas of relief open to them by the city. I know of their concerns, but I also know the concerns of renters. I've been here for 32 years, and I know the constraints now of our rent control charter. I am also aware of the fact that this has to be a community of long-term renters, and the long-term renters now have been put at risk. During the last 2 years, most of our rent-regulated jurisdictions froze rents. We basically passively absorbed rent increases 1.4, 1.7, total 3.1. This is a permanent part of our MARs. And while I feel sympathy for the property owners, I also feel extraordinary sympathy for the tenants who are now facing the 6% increase. I do not want this to become the proverbial tale of two cities where we essentially have the economically privileged living on one end of the spectrum and low-income people, mostly aided by government programs, living on the other, and really nothing in the middle. There's a huge swath of people in the middle who are caught up in this and need to have an appropriate adjustment in the rent reflecting the times. I realize that we're all on economic quicksand right now, both the tenants and the property owners, and I'm sympathetic to small property owners, not the large corporate entities that have come to town, but basically down the road in the near future, whatever areas of concern could be expressed by the small property owners would be appropriate. But right now, what would be extraordinarily appropriate would be a downgrade of the 6% increase that we're all facing, and I'm not quite sure how we get to it anymore, but we have to have that lowered, again, taking into consideration that we have already passively absorbed the 1.4% and the 1.7%, while communities outside of Santa Monica have enjoyed basically flat rents, no increases for the past 2 years. So I would appreciate.
I'm sorry, Mr. Davids, that's your time.
If you would like to conclude your thought, Mr. Davids, please go ahead.
Mr. Davids, you have been unmuted. Please continue.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing so much in the background. Anyway, just to conclude my thought, I would basically see a commensurate decrease in rent reflecting the fact that the 1.4 and the 1.7 have already been added to our MARs. So again, I appreciate the consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Davids. And please excuse the interruption if you heard it. My dog has a nemesis that walked by and started barking at it. So if that interrupted anybody, my apologies. So moving right along, do we have, I believe you said Sonia Sultan had requested to speak. Is that correct, Secretary?
Yes, it looks like Sonia Sultan has rejoined our queue. However, we do have another speaker ahead of her, Ellis Raskin.
Okay, then we'll do the one that first in time. So Ms. Raskin, whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hey everyone, can you hear me? Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for your work tonight. And what I'm going to say is stuff that you all already know, but I'm going to say it for the record because it needs to be said. There have been a few people who have been advocating in this community for a 4% ceiling rather than a 3% ceiling. Now, what gets lost here is that there are real human impacts, even a 1% difference in this. A 1% difference means that people are going to be going without meals. I challenge anyone who's advocating for a 4% increase to show me a landlord who's going without meals. It's just not happening. My neighbors here in the Pico neighborhood, some of them are paying up to 75% of their rent or 75% of their income for rent. These are folks who are sacrificing healthcare, folks who are sacrificing food, who are sacrificing their well-being to pay their rent. Those are not hardships that fall on our landlords. So we need to remember the human impacts here. And there's another thing I want to address too. There's this talking point that's been going around that folks in the rents that are capped, where the increase is capped at $140, are somehow getting a benefit. That somehow that's a lower percentage of an increase. And what gets lost on people is that's based on the false premise that income goes up as rents get higher. That is demonstrably false. As the rents go up, it means that people have less and less disposable income. And so, that $140 hit is a much higher percentage. I dare say, in many cases, above 20% of the remaining disposable income. So, I just don't understand how that's lost on people in this debate. But thank you all for the really, really important work you're all doing. This is a really important issue.
Thank you, Mr. Raskin. Appreciate your comments. Now we have Ms. Sultan.
Yes.
Whenever you're ready.
Ms. Sultan, you will have 2 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted.
Good evening, Rent Board Commissioners, including our newest Commissioner, Commissioner Leslie. Yes, I wanted to call in and comment on a few of the points that I've heard in this discussion. First of all, I agree wholeheartedly that 6% is too high and something needs to be done about it, not only in changing the city charters to lower the GA going forward from 6% to no more than 3%, but also something needs to be done this year. I heard some discussion Tuesday night that either the Rent Board or the City Council would have the authority to do an emergency lowering of to 3% for this year, so that people aren't forced out of their homes or forced to go hungry because of this increase. Because I think it's clear that a very large percentage of renters are really struggling in this hyperinflationary period, and things are just getting worse. So I think something needs to be done, and it needs to be done fast, and I hope that will happen, by the 26th, as soon as possible. But the other thing I was going to comment on is a couple of the callers commented on the fact that the pod program is something tenants can avail themselves of, but if they are really hard pressed to pay their rent because they're paying too high a percentage of their monthly income, often a fixed income for rent, especially as rents go up. And I would like to point out that the reason the pod program is so limited, and it's just to a relatively small group of seniors compared to all the need that's in the city for both other seniors and families who really need rent subsidies to.
I'm sorry, Ms. Sultan, that's your time.
If she could be allowed to quickly finish her point.
Ms. Sultan, you have been unmuted. Please continue.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The point I'm trying to make is the way to expand the pod program is to get a lot more money. And the best way we can do that right now is to pass the citizens initiative that is now qualified for the ballot that would increase the transfer tax only on very, very valuable high-end real estate. And this would provide $50 million plus or minus every year. And one of the main goals is to greatly expand the program so that we can help a lot more financially challenged individuals, families, as well as seniors, and really have an opportunity finally to keep people in their homes and maintain the diversity that's so valuable to our city and what makes our city special and the kind of place we love and want to continue to live in. So thank you, and I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Sultan. Appreciate your comment. Okay, are there any more requests to speak? Secretary Ho?
No, there are no more requests.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move to discussion on this item.
Yes.
Is that Vice Chair Foster or Commissioner Cross?
Carolyn had her hand up.
No, go ahead, Anastasia.
So Carolyn introduced the item. She and I formed the subcommittee a long time ago, so it made sense for us to continue and see it through. I just want to taking the gloves off for a second. Just some plain talk. I've received gazillions of emails, communications. I have monitored posts on Facebook and Nextdoor and Twitter. And I mean everything I'm about to say. While I am very glad that people are sitting up and taking notice because it affects them and it affects the roofs over their heads and their neighbors and their friends or their loved ones, even if not themselves, I am thrilled that everybody is peaked up and paying attention and really educating themselves on the law and everything else. I know it's not easy. I know it's complex. I know people have day jobs and everything else and kids or loved ones. And I know that they feel like they shouldn't have to be a rent control expert also. But when it comes to the roofs over our heads, and we are blessed to be in a city whose citizens have seen fit to give us a program like rent control for 43 years, we need to be good stewards of it. And all of us, tenants and homeowners who are friends of tenants, need to pay attention all the time. And we are here for you. Our staff is here for you. There are renters' rights organizations and landlords' rights organizations that are here for everybody to help, at least on like a 30,000-foot view, teach you about this law. It is complex. It has a lot. I've grown very frustrated at the letters I've received saying, why didn't I do something sooner? I can't speak for my fellow commissioners, but I can speak for myself. We could not act sooner. Our charter stops us from acting except once every 2 years. And that is only when we give it over to the city council to take us at our word that we are subject matter experts, that our staff are multi-decade subject matter experts. And if they have questions, they should come to us. If they have questions, they should go to their staff, our staff. I can assure the public who are listening that our staff worked tirelessly, both inside and outside of regular business hours, for weeks on end, ever since we got those numbers from the government telling us what the CPI from March of 2021 to March of 2022, March 31st, we did not get those numbers until early May. And for anyone who says, oh, we should have seen it coming way back in 2020, and the last time we had a charter opportunity to do anything to the charter, the economy was flat and completely shut down. There was no inflation. There was the opposite of inflation, contraction and chaos. I did receive many letters, and I had certain concerns about us raising the rent at all. But again, unlike Oakland, unlike Berkeley, unlike LA, we don't have the luxury of doing it by ordinance. We have asked the voters of Santa Monica through the city council to agendize or to place on the ballot a bundle of good governance measures that will allow people who do this for free on our own time in the evenings on behalf of tenants in this community. The charter says we are here to preserve existing tenancies and the affordability levels of housing in Santa Monica. That is the mandate of the charter. And the notion that this is some power grab or that we're doing anything other than trying to preserve the fabric of this community makes me angry. And we are here to help and educate. Our staff is notch in giving of their time and their knowledge. Please contact us. Anastasia.foster@santamonica.gov. We are here for you. The second thing and last thing I want to say is, you know, if I hear the word means testing one more time, I'm going to lose it. There is no program in the state of California, in the United States of America, or even globally that does means testing for rent control. It's very simple. We have Section 8. We have POD program. We have deed-restricted affordable housing at various levels of income. We have food stamps. We have voucher programs. We have all sorts of things that are designed specifically for our lower income friends and neighbors. Rent control is not for poor people. Rent control is for our community. It's for everyone. And after 23 years of unfettered growth in record high vacancy decontrolled rents, I don't want to hear about means testing someone who might have a Mercedes, because they're probably also paying $3,300 a month for a one bedroom. And I doubt that people who moved into this city in the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years since vacancy decontrol are necessarily all rich or all doctors or all affluent. I'm sick and tired of that word. Many people's lives change every year. Their life circumstances change. An elderly parent moves in with them. They have children. They partner up. They find themselves out of a job after maybe they did well for a while. Their ability to stay in this community is based on continuity of their rent level, not on their income. They are paying market rents in many, many cases, and the rapidity with which it grows is unsustainable. If you had to income qualify every single year for rent control, it would be ridiculous to say that somebody could get an 8 or 10% increase under AB 1482 as opposed to rent control. That's not what this program is for. And I apologize for my fervor, but this gets to me. It's for our entire community across a spectrum of buildings, spectrum of income levels, sizes of units, makeup of roommates and families and partners and everyone who lives in these units. It's for our community, the fabric of our community. And as soon as we want to start talking about means testing property owners for Prop 13, we can talk about means testing for rent control. Because just as much as that's a non-starter for you, this is a non-starter for us. I am fully supporting 3% as a new GA cap for the Santa Monica rent control law. And I very much want people to understand that, yes, even though it's been a little nebulous as to what city staff is going to recommend and what city council is going to do, I do believe that there are going to be great results, Santa Monicans, because council is going to strongly work with their staff to find that solution, and it's going to be presented to us very soon. The Rent Control Board is not in charge of that. We have told the public through op-eds and 18 million speeches and meetings, and it's really hard. It is hard to reach everybody because they are busy. They have other lives. They don't know to tune in. One of our applicants said people don't know how to get on Blue Jeans. I agree. And we do our best at outreach. But I will just finish by saying I think we are going to find a solution as a community to get through this. We want people to contact us, and we want to help you. I would rather them see us extend our term limits to 3 instead of 2. The notion that we need churn because 70% are renters, well, 100% are citizens. Do we need more churn on the city council as well? There's even more citizens there. The notion that we are not here to do exactly what the charter set us out to do and that knowledge base is not valuable is an insult, and I don't appreciate it. I very much do appreciate the public who have chimed in. I appreciate people who've applied to be on this board. And we hope you stick with us, get more involved, and I, for one, am here to communicate with all members of the public. I will stop talking now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Foster. Commissioner Terosis.
Thanks. I have to second, third, and fourth everything that Commissioner Foster said. I sat through 5 hours of City Council testimony on Tuesday, and I have some reflections, but I'll get to that in a moment. I strongly encourage all of my fellow commissioners to support us recommending a up to 3% cap on rent increases to go to the voters, for the voters to decide. Just like the voters decided they wanted rent control, just like the voters have the agency and authority to make the decisions, I believe we should give this to the voters. Additionally, I just want to make a few comments. Yesterday, the new inflation numbers came out, 9.1%. This is not going away. We saw an unprecedented rent increase this year, and we will see it again next year if the inflation numbers hold true. We need to act now. We cannot wait. We cannot afford to wait. I also want to say that an article came out yesterday stating that the rents in the United States have grown at their fastest pace since 1986. And guess what? Almost a third of our CPI is based off of housing costs. So rents rise, inflation rises, rents rise again. It's a cycle, and we need to stop it. I know I appreciate all the landlords that are saying that we need to provide stipends to folks to be able to pay their rent. Guess what? That still bakes in a 6% rent increase into the MAR going forward forever in perpetuity. That continues to make it even more unaffordable and even more inaccessible. And that is not the city that I decided to live in. That's not the reason I chose to live on this, to live here and to serve on this board, because I do not want to live in a place that's economically gated. I appreciate living in a place where we can have a rent control department next to a multi-million-dollar house, next to an amazing school and a clean park and a beach and community serving activities, because we all deserve to be able to access all of these services. Just because folks are poor or have less means does not mean they make bad decisions. And the fact that we are talking in such a paternalistic way so as to say that we know what's better for you and we will decide if we are going to allow you to have a rent increase or not based on what car you drive or where you choose to spend your vacation, guess what? We need to give folks the agency to make decisions over their own financial household expenses. And rent control is not an affordable housing program. I want to be very clear. Deed restricted affordable housing is completely different than rent control. Rent control is a tool to stabilize communities, and it's a tool to allow folks the certainty to age in place, to raise a family, to know what their expenses will be year over year and plan for that so that they can do things like put their kids in an after-school program or take a vacation or be with their family. That is what this affords our community. And so to hear council on Tuesday night say we need to restudy why we have rent control or reformulate rent control or come back with other options so that we can do means testing, to me, demonstrates a fundamental lack of understanding of preserving folks in existing housing, of wanting to solve our homeless crisis and making sure that folks are able to be stable in this community. So I too have to say, I'm saying it like it is, but I was deeply offended at the wording and the way at which the expertise of our staff, of our board, of the work we've done was completely cast aside. And I did not find that to be acceptable. And I choose to believe that we hear the voice of our community and we want to protect them because, again, 70% of our constituents are renters. We cannot cast that aside in favor of a few landlords. Now, I understand that landlords are small businesses and we want to preserve folks being able to build wealth and stay here and, yes, make a fair return on their investment. But if I see that we have tons of multifamily units on the market not being sold, or we have tons of folks who are not able to make ends meet and need to petition for a rent increase process, I will then maybe pay attention. But I have not seen the need of landlords supersede the need of our tenants. And in fact, over $36 million in rent relief, like was mentioned with one of the callers, was afforded to our landlords during the COVID-19 rent relief program. Over 95% of our applicants were granted rent relief. So landlords have been made whole. Who's making our tenants whole? I didn't receive a 6% raise for cost of living, did you? So respectfully, I would ask that my commissioners place a 3% cap, recommended 3% cap to place that on the ballot to our city council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. I have Commissioner Leslie's had her hand up. Go ahead, Commissioner Leslie.
I have to take a deep breath because I too was at City Council. And what I saw at City Council was very disheartening and almost inhumane. The countless number of emails and people and some of our disabled residents coming out and saying that they couldn't afford a 6%. And the way that they deliberated, where they put money over people, where 70% of our residents are renters. And as I try to take on the charge and alert people, because like you said, like I've heard some people say, they didn't know about the 6%. I knocked on neighbors' doors. I, emailed people. I had an email transcribed to Spanish to make sure that people understood. Not everyone was reading their mail. Our communities are so stressed out trying to just make the ends meet that they have now. And for our council to turn their ears off and count their dollars because they're landlords, not all, but because they're landlords, and they forgot what it was like to be renters, was, at the very least I can say, was insensitive and not considering the needs of their constituents and their neighbors of this community. I thought that when we took oath, that our first responsibility is to the communities that we represent. And I felt it was my duty as a leader in this community to be there at City Council without me sitting on this board to represent the neighbors that I've helped feed over this pandemic, the neighbors that have given me their concerns and have asked me for help over this pandemic. And I just think even we should have been granted emergency powers first and foremost to freeze the rent. Nobody's losing money, as the 34 million or 36 that was given by the state. And the county has just extended another eviction protection on July 1st for people to get recoup money if they still can't cover the rent. I just don't even know what else to say because it's just, I'm just so upset about the whole thing. It's ridiculous. Not only did they not know, but they didn't want to know. They just wanted to make sure that they kept their pockets lined with their buildings. And as long as they're okay, I guess that's okay for everybody else too.
Thank you, Commissioner Leslie. Commissioner Trosas, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment as well to note, I know there's some discussion about similarly situated jurisdictions, that I would like to alert the folks that the city of LA still has a rent increase moratorium in effect until 2023 for their rent controlled tenancies or rent stabilized tenancies. So I just want to be clear. I mean, that is a huge proportion of renters in this. That's 650,000 apartments in the city of LA. And I think that we pride ourselves on being forward-thinking, innovative, and progressive, if you will, dare I say that, and leading the way for the rest of the state. I am ashamed that we are not in that position at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner Trosas. I will say briefly that having seen the council meeting and comments and the issues. What strikes me is that these issues are they're bigger than any of us, right, as politicians. They're bigger than any council member. It seems like that was lost. This is about stabilizing a community for many reasons. And it seems like the opportunity was lost or not seen, and that's tragic. But there is still opportunity to move forward. I think that we can't undo what was done, but what we can do moving forward is see what we can do about changing that cap to 3% so that it can help people who need it. Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to help people. Right? That's why I got into public service. So I don't know unless there's any other comments on this. If I could have the assistance from council, Ms. Regan or Ms. Condon on what the next step can be regarding this item, if procedurally what we should do, if we leave it here or if we make a motion to do something. Any comments from either of you?
So this was a discussion item on your agenda. So there's no action to be taken. You've made your comments clear, and the city council is going to take up this item on July 26th to discuss and to act on whether to put it on the ballot to go from 6% to 3%.
Can I ask a question, Ms. Regan?
Sure.
Are we? I thought on Tuesday that the city council would have read our staff report that was prepared, but it did not appear as though they had. Is there a way that we can be prepared in 2 weeks? I mean, can we give you direction to prepare some presentation to them that this is what the rent board is recommending? And it also seemed that a lot of anecdotal evidence was being relied upon rather than data. It seems like we might need to pull out parts of our staff report, and also our annual report, so that we can make a decision based in reality here. Is that something that we can direct you to do?
Yeah, so the city attorney's office is going to prepare the staff report, but we will work with them. And I think certainly we can include aspects of the annual report and make sure the facts are available to them and include that in our presentation. We're somewhat limited in that we're obviously not a part of their deliberations. So if the city council chooses to ignore what we have presented to them in order to emphasize whatever stories they want to tell, whether based in reality or not, there's not much we can do about that.
Sure. It just seemed that in retrospect, I might have laid out the information in a very plain way. Perhaps we could talk offline, but I would like to see us make some sort of presentation to the council so that we can crystallize the entire board's position and the data that we have to back up that position. So thank you.
Okay, then if there's nothing else to discuss on this item, looks like there is not. We will move on to item number 15, which, let me get my cheat sheet here, there was a written communication, a late email that was provided regarding comments that was made on the June 9th public hearing on the 2022 general adjustment. And we may discuss the issue presented by the written communication. We can't take any action on it. Or and we can hear from the public on it if we all agree by motion to do so. So my first question would be, does anybody want to speak on the late email that was received in our packet, the 15A?
Can you identify the email
Yes.
that you're referring to?
It was regarding the 6% threshold from Mr. Ed Wheatley. It was item 15A, written communication.
Oh, Whitney. Yeah. I mean, I read the email.
Okay. And it's listed under item 15A. We can choose to talk about it since it was from a past meeting or not. Does anybody want to discuss it?
I understand now. I don't know that that's actionable, though,
No.
considering we've already announced the adjustment. So I'd be happy to communicate with a constituent, offline. I don't know that there's action to be taken.
Okay. Agreed. It's just that if you wanted to discuss it, this would be the time to do it. It's been agendized. Seeing no interest in doing that, then that leaves us with...
I'm sorry, Chair Duran. We did have a caller join us. I'm not sure if he wishes to speak on item 15. However, Mr. Davids did rejoin our speakers queue.
Okay, so hang on a sec. Before, according to my cheat sheet here, we have to decide by vote whether we want to allow him to speak on this item. So shall we allow him to speak by roll call vote? If you could assist with that, Mr. Secretary Hill.
Yes, Commissioner Torosis.
What?
Sorry, yes.
Commissioner Sultan?
Sure.
Commissioner Leslie?
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster?
Yes.
Chair Duran?
Yes.
Motion carries.
If you can assist Secretary Hill.
Yes, Mr. Davids, you will have 2 minutes to address the board on item 15. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Actually, that was a technological glitch on my part. I didn't want to say anything further. I'm sorry if I accidentally hit the wrong button here.
Thanks, Mr. David.
Okay, thank you, Mr. David. Then is there any, was that it? Secretary Hill, was that the only speaker?
Yes.
Okay. Then we are moving on to item number 16, which is adjournment. Commissioner Sultan, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Before we adjourn, I actually have an announcement to make. I am going to be moving out of Santa Monica August 1st, and so I actually need to resign, unfortunately, from the rent board effective July 31st. As I mentioned before, I was heartened to see that we got so many wonderful applicants for the position, and I feel like, Commissioner Leslie is already such a wonderful addition to the board that, like I said, I'm sad to need to resign. Unfortunately, that's the rule. I can't stay on the board if I'm not living in Santa Monica after July. But I do feel like the board is in good hands and will continue to be in good hands going forward. So thank you all for serving with me. I've learned so much, particularly from the commissioners that I served with for extended periods of time. It's been a truly wonderful experience getting to know you and having the opportunity to get to know Tracy and the staff and get to serve the citizens of Santa Monica. So thank you so much. This is a sad moment for me, but yeah, feeling very positive about the work that the board is currently doing and will continue to do in the future. So thank you.
Well, Commissioner Sultan, that's surprising news and sad news. I've enjoyed working with you these past few years. So I'm saddened to hear that you will be leaving us. But I'm also happy to hear that you're moving on, bigger, brighter things, and good luck to you with your future endeavors. I don't know if anybody else wants to make any comments. I think that this will be the last time we see her as a commissioner, so I'll take a moment to gather my thoughts and see if I can come back. I see Commissioner Leslie's hand up, and then I see Vice Chair Foster, and then Commissioner Chris.
Commissioner Sultan, I'm sorry to see you go. I didn't even get a chance to get to know you well yet. That's a teaser. So you owe me at least a coffee or something so I can get to have a conversation with you or something, okay? But I wish you well. All the best.
Thank you. Definitely.
Naomi, oh my God, we are so sad to lose you. I remember when you first decided to run for the office, and you reached out to a bunch of us, and we had meetings to talk about, what it would all look like. I remember sitting in the living room with you and sitting on a couch all hours of the night talking about what the service on this board means and how it works and sometimes how it doesn't. Just all the different all the ins and outs of public service and what it means to take on that responsibility. And man, you hit it out of the park. I mean, just you're kind, you're collegial, you're inquisitive. You showed respect to the tenants, the landlords, the staff, and to each of us. And we're just very sorry to see you go. We're gonna miss you.
And I would just say, obviously, this is just another indication that Santa Monica is not very affordable if we're losing folks that need to go elsewhere, and good folks. And Naomi, I'm really, really sad not to be serving with you. Your intellect, your empathy, the fact that you've dedicated your life's work to helping folks who haven't been able to have a voice or representation just kind of permeated over to the board. And I know we're going to continue working together in our professional capacities, and really just appreciate all of your service. And can't say how upset and sad I am, but I feel a little bit better knowing that we had some really great applicants for the position that we just appointed Erica to, and hopefully we're going to continue to bring folks in. So let's thank Naomi for everything that she's done for us, and really just appreciate your friendship and your leadership.
Ms. Connie, go ahead.
Yes, I would also like to thank you, Ms. Commissioner Sultan, for the wonderful work that you've done on the board. Been very dedicated to what we're all here to focus on and accomplish. And as Commissioner Terosis just said, you've dedicated your life to helping people who are facing major challenges. So thank you so much for the 3+ years that you've served here on the board. We can't thank you enough for your contributions, and I wish you the best in the future as well.
Thank you all for your kind words.
Be well. Naomi. Ms. Condon, just as a refresher, I know this maybe only happened a month or 2 months ago. Can you remind me again what our next steps should be so that everybody's informed?
Yes. Well, we will officially announce the vacancy at your next meeting, and then you can have a discussion about how you would like to proceed with the process for soliciting applications for this new opening. I hope that the people who had submitted for this opportunity will consider submitting for this new opening, as we did have a very strong group of candidates, and I was very encouraged to see that as well. So we will discuss it at the August meeting, and probably you'll have it open for 30 days like you did, and then hopefully in September we'll have the opportunity you'll have the opportunity to appoint a new commissioner.
Okay. Commissioner Leslie, you have a question?
I just had a quick question. Since it's so quick into the last vacancy, can we just retain or just leave the opening that we had open for another 30 days? You can't do that? Okay. I was just trying to make it easier, because people have already turned in their applications. If we could just pick from the pool of people that have already applied. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, I mean, each of us as individual commissioners are free to reach out to these folks. We have their contact information. They are free to reach out to us at our government emails or get together with us or talk with us. New people who might have gotten interested during this whole process might now be interested in applying as well. I think legally it's a separate new vacancy.
Right. I believe that because it's a new vacancy, there's a requirement that there be notice, like 30-day notice or something along those lines. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Condon, but so I think that's the reason why we couldn't just nominate someone else from the people that we already have, which is a very good question because you're right, it would be very efficient, but there may be new people who may want to apply as well, and we should give them the opportunity. That's my understanding. Okay, I kind of glitching. I don't know if anybody is speaking right now, or is it?
No,
let's adjourn.
I moved to adjourn and also moved to accept Commissioner Sultan's resignation and direct staff to advertise the vacancy and publish, or at least come back to us with the process for the opening.
Sad second. Can we just act by acclamation, or do we have to vote?
We gotta vote because of we're remoting. Secretary Ho?
Yes, Commissioner Leslie.
Sadly, yes. I would say no, but that won't make her stay.
Commissioner Sultan.
Naomi.
Of course, my last vote is a tech glitch. Yes.
Commissioner Trosis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
Chair Duran.
Yes, and may I announce that our next scheduled meeting is when? Secretary Ho, maybe you can help me out with that.
That would be August 11th.
August 11th at 7 p.m. Yes. We'll be doing it remotely, I believe.
I would like to adjourn in the honor of the outgoing public servant, Naomi Sultan, and the incoming public servant, Erica Leslie.
Absolutely.
Second.
Agreed. Be well, everyone. See you next time.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.